So GiGi is here to talk to me about two cases. Lindsay Clancy, the trial that's taking place right now at the time of this recording, as well as the Mackenzie Shirilla case.
And this case is just a reminder that women need to be vocal and find their people and talk about this when they're experiencing it so that they do have that support. I think we definitely could be getting a hung jury. To see that there has been so little talk of Davion and Dom in these calls. It's all about her.
Sofa Squad, it is an honor to have GiGi from Pretty Lies and Alibis back here on the sofa to have a conversation and weigh in with me on the Lindsay Clancy trial that's taking place right now. So go ahead and fill your cups up and get your true crime blankie, and let's get into today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. That's the sofa I keep talking about. If you're new here, my name's Paul. If you're not new here and you're a regular, we like to switch it up a little bit. And so today we'll call myself George. GiGi and George. It has a little bit of ring to it, right? Now, GiGi is the creative force behind the channel Pretty Lies and Alibis. You might recognize her from that. You might recognize her from other podcasts. You might recognize her from news where she goes and reports on these trials. She's been doing this for a long time. She knows that courtroom. She has such good insight, and she's such an amazing, empathetic, just nice, fun person to sit down and talk with and have a conversation. It always feels like I'm just sitting with a dear friend who I've known for my entire life. So it's an honor to have her over here. So GiGi is here to talk to me about two cases. Lindsay Clancy, the trial that's taking place right now at the time of this recording, as well as the Mackenzie Shirilla case. Now, if you're not familiar with the Lindsay Clancy case and the trial, let me go over just the quick overview of it and get us all on the same page here. On January 24th, 2023, Lindsay Clancy was home in Duxbury, Massachusetts with her three children. There's a 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan. That evening, Lindsay sent her husband, Patrick, out to pick up medication and takeout. While he was gone, Lindsay strangled all three children with exercise bands in the basement of their home. She then would injure herself and eventually jump out of the second-story window. Sadly, none of the children would make it. Lindsay would survive, but she would suffer spinal injuries that left her paralyzed. Now, the big issue in this trial isn't whether Lindsay took the life of her children. That's not disputed. The prosecution says Lindsay knew exactly what she was doing and knew it was wrong. The defense argues that she was suffering from severe postpartum mental illness and was not criminally responsible for her actions. So ultimately, this case comes down to Lindsay's state of mind at the time she took the lives of her children. And the Mackenzie Shirilla case is another one that took the nation by storm. The Mackenzie Shirilla case centers around a deadly crash that prosecutors argued was not an accident, but an intentional act of murder. So on July 31st, 2022 in Strongsville, Ohio, a then 17-year-old Mackenzie Shirilla was driving a Toyota Camry with her boyfriend Dominic Russo and his friend Davion Flanagan. Now they were going approximately 100 miles per hour and the vehicle slammed into a commercial building. Dominic and Davion were killed. Mackenzie somehow survived with serious injuries. Now at first it looked like a horrific crash, right? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, what a tragedy. But there was way more to it. So the prosecution built a case that was effectively a murder self-unaliving attempt fueled by relationship turmoil. Now some of the key points for this included that there was no braking before impact, prior threats made by her, possible premeditation, lots of relationship conflict, and drug evidence. Now the judge would famously nickname this case, this whole trial, this whole situation or whatever, at least the media picked it up to, hell on wheels. And I think that's pretty accurate. Now the defense of course said, hey, this is not intentional. And their arguments included that Mackenzie suffered from possible medical issues. There's like discussions around POTS and whatnot. And you know, that's a whole other thing as well. She may have blacked out. The crash could have been caused by impairment, dehydration, a medical episode, something, right? And that she had no memory of the event. However, that's left for everybody's opinion of if we think she really just does not remember that or not. Now, of course, the court would reject this explanation, right? So in August of 2023, after a bench trial, Mackenzie was convicted on multiple felony charges, including murder, aggravated vehicular homicide, felonious assault, drug possession, possession-related counts. She was then sentenced to 15 years to life in prison for each of the boys' murders. Those ran concurrent, and she is eligible for parole after serving 15 years. Her earliest parole date is 2037. Now, the Netflix documentary The Crash has recently come out, and it revisits the case and has really reignited debate because it heavily leans into Mackenzie's perspective while also visiting the evidence. Now, the documentary will cover the timeline leading up to the crash, police footage, trial evidence, family interviews, even Mackenzie speaking from prison, and her continued insistence that she did not intentionally kill Dominic or Davian. All right, so now that we're on the same page of the cases we're talking about and who's who and everything, let's go ahead and get into GiGi and I's conversation. Hello, GiGi from Pretty Lies and Alibis. It is amazing to have you back on the sofa. How have you been doing?
So, yeah, I've been doing good, just covering the Lindsay Clancy trial, getting ready for this grandbaby to come in the next less than 2 weeks now. So life's good my way. How about you?
It's doing good, and congratulations on that. That is so exciting. I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. I bet you were just like, okay, here we go. Here we go. All right.
Dude, I'm going to be the coolest grandma ever. That baby's already got like 6 Pink Floyd onesies.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That is so cool. That's awesome. New adventures, new life, all the stuff. It's just amazing.
It is. And I look like I have a magic 8-ball growing out of the top of my head.
I know, right?
That wasn't the best placement.
Those are so fun. I wonder if you can get them specific to things.
I don't know. I use it all the time when I'm just like, I don't know what to do. It's like,
I love it. I love
it.
Yeah, so everything's been going good here. Same as you, covering Lindsay Clancy, going over Shirilla stuff, all that. The Lindsay Clancy case is interesting because it's one that's obviously taken place for a while, and then it took off. And to me, this case is so interesting on not only the legal way, because it's something we don't really see that often. This not guilty by reason of insanity defense it's not one that's really used that often. That part's been very interesting. The legal part going down, the psychological part that we're hearing, and we're recording this on Sunday the 9th. And so we've seen a lot of testimony. We finally made our way up to the doctors who are treating her, that are in the civil suit and whatnot. Tomorrow, the defense will cross-examine Dr. Jennifer Tufts. And I can't wait to get up tomorrow. I'm so excited to see this testimony. It's been fascinating to see how the state has been outlining their case. Do you have any insight? Because you've covered trials for a long time, like even before you started doing, like you've been doing this for a minute. Do you have any insights from your experience of like what you've seen in courtrooms playing out with how this is going so far, like with the state and things, tactics and things like that?
Well, not guilty by reason of insanity pleas are they're not often, like you say. Andrea Yates would be probably the best case to compare this to. It's very similar. It's postpartum psychosis. It's your kids. So for me, this trial's been a bit of a learning experience because I did not follow Andrea Yates when that happened. I didn't follow it through the courts or anything. So for me, I'm learning as I go with this one. And it's very different. To hear the state's theory is that she planned it. I don't think the thing that I've heard, and I really honestly, Paul, don't have an opinion yet because I was covering Daybell when this happened. I remember covering it initially, but there were like how many trials for her and Chad? I mean, there were a lot. So I was really kind of committed to those. So I knew the framework of the case going in, but kind of have been listening to this as a juror would, which is kind of, I don't want to say it's refreshing because there are no winners here. This is a sad case, horrible, horrific, any way you look at it. But it's been interesting to kind of just sit back and listen to the evidence as it's presented because you have the not guilty by reason of insanity. And then I think the one thing that stands out to me is as far as the prosecution goes, if I'm a juror, I'm thinking you say she planned it, but you really haven't given me a reason why. Like, what would her reason be? People say, was Patrick having an affair? No, we would have heard about that in openings. They looked at all their phones. If there was any evidence of that, that would have lent to motive. So I think for me, the biggest thing missing in the state's case is why. You say she was not mentally ill and you just say she kids. For me, I'm not sure other than them saying kids, why? I think that's, unless I've missed something, but, I don't really feel I've heard anything where they just put a line in the sand and said, this is why she did it. So for me, that's kind of, if I'm a juror, that's what I'm asking up at this point. And I think we're nearing the end of the state's case is what I've heard. It's not going to be too long before it's the defense's turn. So it'll be interesting to see. And Jennifer Tufts, I think she's got a tough day coming tomorrow. This is a big witness, huge witness.
Yeah, and we're on the same page because I'm doing the same thing. Once this trial started off, it was one of those things where you almost had to step back and just be like, let's just take this in day by day, testimony by testimony. Most of the trials that we cover are so Lori Daybell, Letitia Stout, Corey Richens. There's almost this level of it so absurd, so grotesque. It's just a different vibe, right? It's not like this stuff we're seeing here where it's like, okay, this has so many complexities to it. So that's what I've been doing too, is just taking it in and trying to remain on that fence of like, okay, and examining each thing and asking why on both sides. Well, if the state says this, then why? If the defense says this, which again, he hasn't presented his case, I am the same exact way as you, where I keep coming back to, I need to hear why from the state. If this was pre-planned, if this was this thing, then it's missing some kind of like glue to tie their story together that I look for when on either side, really. And they're not really delivering that for me yet. But again, it's still, when I say early, I think the defense is going to present a huge, side of their story. And I think that's where a lot of the trial will reside.
I think so too. And it's not a question she killed her kids. She's admitted to it. So to me, the prosecution isn't really telling us anything we didn't know. And they're going with, obviously with she chose to kill the kids and tried to do it to herself. But juries want to know why. If you just say the obvious, well, she stipulated that she killed her kids. Okay, well, why are we here? And I know it's because she wants to spend her life in a mental hospital as opposed to prison and that kind of thing. And she's entitled to a trial. But yeah, I think we agree on that. There's been no flat out, this is why she did it. She did it, but we can't tell you why. And so I think that could be something that the jury needs to hear, but they may not.
Yeah. And I wonder how that will play out when they go back to that deliberation room, and how all that will come about.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are going to come into play. You have a female heavy jury. A lot of those women could have very well experienced just postpartum depression. Now, postpartum psychosis is a whole other beast, and that's what's at play here. That's the argument. If you have men you're going to have men deliberating. If their wife had postpartum depression, they may go back to those times and say, man, it was just a bad time and nothing we did help. So I think it's going to be very interesting regardless once this goes to the jury to see where we end up, obviously. But man, wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall? But I'll tell you this, Paul, and this is just for reference. I had a friend that I went to high school with, and she moved to another state shortly after we graduated, never came back permanently. And I was pregnant with my youngest at the same time she was pregnant with her first. And she had tried for 10 years or more to get pregnant. They went to fertility clinics. She would get pregnant, lose the baby. And finally, out of the blue, it was about a month after I posted I was pregnant, she inboxed me and said, I'm pregnant and I can't wait because we have prayed for this kid. We have waited. And so we kept in touch during our pregnancy and compared notes and sort of, how are you feeling? Are you experiencing this? And then we had our babies, and our communication, for obvious reasons, kind of dropped off. You're tired. Last thing you want to do is talk to somebody in Facebook Messenger. But it wasn't until about a year and a half later that she opened up to me and told me she developed postpartum psychosis and was having thoughts of her baby. And she was very vocal about it because she said, I couldn't control the thoughts. I would look at this kid and think, I want to hurt them. And this is a kid I had hope for and cried over for 10 plus years. And what she did was she immediately went and voluntarily committed herself. And then once she told them, I want to hurt this kid, they Baker act her. And she decided she decided with her family and her husband that while she's getting treatment, she could be home. But that child lived 4 months with the grandparents because it was her choice to say, I'm not safe around this kid. I don't know what it is. I love this kid, but I want to hurt this kid. And it took her months to get straightened out. And she, talked about how once she was straightened out, the guilt she felt for feeling that way, but she couldn't control it. And, so I will say that postpartum psychosis, while it is so rare, you may have it, but it's rare that you children or them. It does happen. And I think women are still so stigmatized, even by postpartum depression. You have a baby, you should be happy. Like you just gave birth to like you're a little human. But our bodies don't always work that way as a woman, and our bodies can betray us, man or woman. Your body can betray you anytime at any given moment. But she was so embarrassed, and it took her a long time to admit that to me. And I told her, that's the responsible thing to do, to not say it because you still want to be around the kid, or you don't want to admit that you want to hurt your kid because it's such a rare thing. And it's a very taboo subject, but this is somebody who had waited for 10 years. So I'm just saying it can happen, and it can happen to people who are the last people you think it would happen to. And it is a biology thing. So I'll say that. I'm not saying that's the case here because I'm just listening to the evidence until deliberation. But it was shocking when she told me that, because you would think, oh my gosh, finally you have a baby, and that happened.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's so powerful that she, eventually told you that, and that she had that insight to do that. Like, hey, I need help with this or whatever. One thing that I think with this case, with this trial, that has been a silver lining, if you will, however you say it, is the conversation that is bringing to the forefront. Because I see so many people, like people in real life, like people, women I know and whatnot, talking about this and talking about what you just said, like the shame that could be associated with, obviously maybe not the psychosis level, because that is like another step up, so rare or whatever, but definitely the what might have used to have been called baby blues, or that whole thing, and the postpartum depression and whatnot, and coming forth and feeling confident that, like, hey, I'm feeling seen, like, here's this, I can talk about this, and this is a real thing, and this is what this is like, and all those things or whatever. It's been a really valuable learning experience to me to hear these stories. They're really powerful. And then I don't know the right word for it, but just almost like an awakening of like, wow, I didn't know. Obviously I don't know what postpartum depression is like or whatever. I know my own depression I've dealt with, some of these medications that she's talked about, meaning Lindsay, that she's on, that I've dealt with when I was younger and whatnot. So I have experience, but nothing like that, of like going to that level of hormonal changes that go with, birth and pregnancy and all that. So it's been a really big learning lesson for me.
And I love that, because even in my chat, I mean, you and I both kind of run our chats the same way. Don't come in here starting drama. Don't come trolling. You're going to get booted. I hate booting people, but I love the fact that my chat is a safe place, because we've had people who have admitted their struggles after pregnancy and literally will say, I never thought I would say that publicly, but I feel seen. I feel understood. I'm not alone in this. And then it starts a domino effect where other women are like, yeah, I had it too. And I wanted this baby. But your body goes through Armageddon after birth. I mean, you grew a whole human, and then, the baby's out and your body has to go back to normal, but it's not overnight. Your hormones are all over the place. And on top of that, you're tired. You got a newborn getting you up every 2 hours. So, it's a really, I never experienced postpartum depression with any of my kids, thank goodness. But I can't imagine, just with what I felt physically after giving birth 3 times, to add on postpartum depression. So hats off to these women who, a lot of times silently struggle with it, because it shouldn't be that way. I mean, I think that, with some of the temperature around the discussions in this case, some people don't feel like they can say it in certain chat rooms or Facebook groups that they, because then you have the moms that didn't have it say, oh, come on now. And I've seen that, there's a stigma around mental health in 2026. It is insane. We have learned so much about the brain and how it works and how sometimes it doesn't work. And there's still a stigma, and we've got to change that, because it can save lives. And I think that one of the biggest crises we have right now in this country is mental health, that there aren't enough resources. People are not being listened to. People are being discharged too early, and we're seeing the end result on the news. And so for me, I'm on my soapbox right now. We've got to change the narrative. Most of us at some point have had some sort of mental illness, whether it be temporary, whether it be depression. And I don't know. I just think that we've got to change this narrative in this country, especially around women. And this case is just a reminder that women need to be vocal and find their people and talk about this when they're experiencing it, so that they do have that support. I don't think Lindsay had that. I don't think she communicated to very many people from what I've seen so far. She did have that one friend that she confided in, that she was having these intrusive thoughts. To me, it seemed like she was sort of on her own a bit in dealing with it. I mean, she had Patrick, but Patrick's not a woman. And I'm not being sexist, but a man cannot understand what a woman's body goes through. So look, it's just a sad case, man. You got these 3 beautiful babies that just, are gone.
One thing too, going back to some of that testimony that I thought was interesting, and also is kind of coming up to the forefront, and again, back to mental health and how these, things work in doctors, was hearing from the 2 doctors that treated her, one at McLean Center and then Dr. Jennifer Tufts, who was up last. And I went through the civil lawsuit. Now it's like 800 pages. When I say I went through it, I have not read every single page of it, but going through the main chunks of it. And that's where I started off first, because before the trial started, you could get an idea of maybe what the defense is going to be like. Where are we going with this kind of a thing? The first is this sticker shock of all these drugs, where it's oh my gosh, this is this huge list of drugs in here, and this just whatever. It was wow. And then to get some explanation to it. And I felt like there was 2 things that played out in the courtroom on Friday. The Dr. Goodhart, I believe her name was, from McLean Center, and hearing her talk. And that was a little bit of a slower testimony. It was a little bit, more difficult. And again, like you said, they're being very reserved. These people and their institutions are being sued. So they're being, dotting I's, crossing T's, And one thing that I see people talk about that, when I think about my own experiences with mental health and doctors and stuff, where it's the 17-minute mental health status checkup, where somebody's presenting in this, there's all this stuff going on. And that's been my experience too, a lot of times, where there's just these very quick, okay, but how's this going? And that's mostly the psychiatry end of it. When you get into say the psychologist, that's a little bit more in depth, 45 minutes, an hour each session, however it goes. But hearing how some of this played out, where there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect on some levels, and almost the feeling of just getting shuffled through like a number, and it's almost there's no depth to it. It's almost okay, well, here's this, what's your number? Okay, what are you feeling like? Okay, you look pretty decent. And the conversation of self-reporting, a lot of this, it depends on the patient self-reporting. And there's so many reasons. I would have to be really bad off to go into the doctor. You know how even the doctor visit, they'll ask you do you have a safe place at home? Do you want something? Do you want to do the whatever? Most of the time people are going to say no, because that's going to kick off a trajectory of events. And, Lindsay had her nursing thing. She's wanting to get better. I mean, I saw plenty of evidence of her wanting to get better. She does not want to live a life on drugs her whole life. She wants to get over this. How can we do this? Whatever. And so I would think she probably knew, what, I'm going to get air quote punished if I sit here and say, oh, you know what, I'm feeling this way. But that whole situation there has really come to the front of the table for people who might not have that much experience to be oh, wait, this is how this goes. I didn't know this is how this worked, and I have questions now.
Well, I think too, Paul, when you're dealing with somebody like Lindsay, who her self-reporting is, I'm getting worse, and even the doctor testified on Friday. At first, her mood and her affect was good. And then by the end, the doctor put she was depressed. To me, I think at some point, you have to stop telehealth visits and you have to see them in person, because you're seeing me from here up right now. I could be sitting here rubbing my hands, bouncing my knee. I could be rubbing my palms against my legs. There's so much that's not said through your mouth, that's said through your body, that I think when it comes to mental health, it is such a fine line that maybe every single appointment, and I'm not just talking about Lindsay, I'm talking in general, at some point you need to, every other visit, go be seen in person so that they can see, have you lost weight? Are you fidgety? You know what I'm saying? It's just, I can sit here and act fine for 20 minutes if I have to. But I've went through a spell in my life way back when, it was over 20 years ago, that I was in a very dark place. And some of the meds they started me off on were a disaster, so I get where meds can make things worse. And it took a little time to find the right combination. For me personally, it was a very gradual thing where let's just take you off of this for a week or two, let your body sort of cleanse this out. And then we'll try this. But if you have any bad thoughts between now and then, call me back. I wasn't ever to a level at all. But, when you're in depression, you feel like you're never going to be happy again. And that's a really dark place to be by itself. But I felt for me personally, if I'm a juror, I'm saying, man, they just threw a lot of meds at her and said, we'll see you at the next telehealth. That is not a slight to Dr. Tufts. I really feel bad for her in the sense that regardless of whether people think she did what she should or she didn't do enough or she mishandled, she was very new in her career. And this is something that she will live with for the rest of her life, regardless of anything. I mean, I'm sure to some degree she's going to feel, what did I not do? And that's sad. I looked at a picture of her when she was newly out of school and newly practicing. I looked at her on the stand and I thought, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how much stress this has caused her. And every provider that treated Lindsay, they're all going to think, could I have done something different? Did I miss a sign? Did I not give this medication or should I not have given that? So, it's a wide net of emotions of anybody who was in Lindsay's orbit, whether it be family or providers, that will deal with this for the rest of their life. And it's just, there's no words for this case, really. I'm just interested to see what the state ends with. I'm curious, is Dr. Tufts going to be one of their last witnesses? But we haven't heard about the medical examiner for Dawson and Cora. So maybe they're going to briefly do that. But then again, it's the same way as Callan. So, Callan lived, they were able to get a heartbeat back, but his little brain just never recovered, unfortunately. I think we're maybe getting towards the end of the state's case, though, because when you're bringing in people who were directly treating her at the time this happened, you're kind of getting down to your last few witnesses. So I think the defense case is going to be very aggressive. And I think it's going to be a lot of, is it going to impact the jury when Patrick's on that stand and says, I forgive her. This was not the Lindsay I married. She loved her kids. I think a lot of her friend witnesses that we've heard from may be called back. Every one of them have said, she was a great mother. She was a loving mother. You saw the journal entries, wake him up at 10:26. Like, I never got that specific. I'm like, if the kid's sleeping, you let him go. I'll handle that later tonight. But I think that the defense case, more than the state's case, could be the decider for this jury.
Which is unique because a lot of times in so many cases, it's kind of the other way. Oftentimes the defense won't even present a case, like right. Corey at the last minute. Oh, never mind. We're good. In this, the witness list is huge and they've got some heavy hitters on that witness list.
Patrick's going to be your number one. He lived with her. We know his stance, whether you think it's because he's got a lawsuit going or whether, you think he lived with her and he's telling his story. That is going to be your biggest witness. And I honestly, if I'm the defense, I'm calling him last. That's going to be who I close with. And then it's going to be interesting to see, does Patrick become an enemy to the state? And I do think cross-exam with the state's going to be very different from when he was on the stand, because they don't want Patrick to be the last thing the jury hears of, I forgive her. She was never like this. Like, I watched this downhill spiral. So it's going to be interesting to see how hard the state goes against him on cross, which also could turn the jury against the state, because the jury is going to see Patrick as a victim no matter what. He's lost all three of his kids. He lost his wife. But yeah, it's going to be powerful. And honestly, I'm ready for the state to be finished. I want to see what the defense brings at this point.
Yeah. I feel like if I was a juror at this point, the whole feeling I have, except for Dr. Tufts and Dr. Goodhart, that was like, okay, here we go. But I was to the point of, okay, we get it. You're bringing up all her family, her coworkers. They're all saying great things about her. I get the state is trying to portray she's making sound decisions. She's coming across as air quote normal. She's coherent. She's this, she's that. But I feel like you've done that over and over. So let's move it along.
Yeah. It's been repetitive.
Yeah.
It really has.
Repetitive.
And even people who think she's guilty and think she did this because she's just evil have been like, how many people do we need to get up and say, did she say this? Did she say that? Was she fine when you talked to her? We get that. What people also don't know is, just playing the devil's advocate here, postpartum psychosis can hit like that. You can be fine. You can be doing your normal stuff. And that's what my friend told me, is just one day out of the blue, she laid her baby down and was like, oh my God, my baby. And when he woke up, she looked at him and thought, a lot of my perspective comes from her story that she shared with me and hasn't shared with many people. I would never name her, but I'm just saying that for her, it was very quick. It was literally laying the baby down and the baby waking up. Something changed in her mind, and it went from postpartum depression to very scary thoughts. And luckily, she immediately called her husband and said, you've got to come home. I'm having bad thoughts. Like, I've got the baby in a safe spot. I'm going to go outside till you get home. That was the difference there, is that she was able to say, I can't even be in the same house until you make it home from work. So it's not necessarily that she was okay 2 days before this happened. What happened in that moment is the center of this case. Or what didn't happen. If she did it because she's evil, then she's using mental health as a crutch. And in that regard, that's an insult. So, just very all over the place, this case.
Yeah. We'll have to see what takes place. And like I said, tomorrow I'm going to be here at 8:30 and just ready, this keyboard fired up.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to get there.
No, it's one of those where I'm just like cutting my phone off, and the cross is going to be, he is not going to go easy on her whatsoever. I think there's going to be a lot of objections and a lot of sidebars, unfortunately.
A lot of sidebars.
I mean,
they love sidebars.
We can have more sidebars. Good morning, everybody. Let's have a sidebar.
Yeah, literally, right? Now, let's talk before we kind of round things out. So we both have been going, and as well as our audiences and half the internet, on another case, and that is the Mackenzie Shirilla case. And we've both been covering this and going over these phone calls and this and that. And I haven't had a chance to even talk to you about it at all yet. So I'm just curious, like, even if you just contain it to like the phone call part, like, what do you have any takeaway thoughts? What is your thoughts on the whole Shirilla, all the things?
Oh gosh, Paul, you got 2 hours. So I followed this one loosely as well. Once I was able to watch the documentaries on them, and then started pulling like the files and going back to hearings and kind of getting a good grasp on the case. And so I got the phone calls, and look, she is a very self-absorbed woman. Everything is poor me. Everything's against me. I can't get my iPad. I'm so mad. This place is effed up. It's prison, honey. It's not a 5-star hotel, and it's not home or your iPad's on your nightstand. It's just been very revealing to me to see that there has been so little talk of Davion and Dom in these calls. It's all about her. If I'm in prison and I did not do something on purpose, every phone call, I'm going to be sobbing because 2 people are dead, one being a long-term boyfriend. And I'm just going to be inconsolable to where somebody's making herself gag and I can't sleep, and somebody keeps flushing the toilet, and this teleprompter or whatever, this machine's messed up and it's ruined my day, and I can't wait to see you out the window. And for me, it's just gross. No remorse, no empathy for Dom. Something had to have changed with Dom's family, that wasn't her fault. Had to be outside influence, or maybe they just found out the facts. So I just feel like she thinks the world and the prison world revolves around her and her feelings, and she got a hard lesson coming for the rest of her life in there.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The phone calls are so revealing, and that's such a good word to say, because I think that a lot of the public felt that way too, not just with the phone calls, but when the crash came out, that documentary, and brought this up to a national level. It was like I remember covering the trial, and it was shocking then, and watching the mom's statement at the victim impact statements, and you're kind of like, what? And then it kind of went away. And then the crash came out, and the nation was just like, what? Everyone stopped and was like, what's this Mackenzie thing? And
I feel like the whole fire.
Oh, completely. And I think that what's interesting too with this is I stop myself every time I talk about it. I'm like, Paul, remember, they, meaning her family and maybe supporters, whatever, but Mackenzie, her parents and whatnot, view her as a victim. And so I try and put that lens on of like, Paul, that's what they're viewing this as. So that's why they speak ill of Dom here, or ill of this here, or whatever. Not saying I agree with it, but just trying to wrap my mind around some of the stuff you'll hear them talk about and the way they do it. But even taking that aside, the underlying and sometimes overt giddiness with the infamy that has come with this is so jarring to me to hear, like coming from the mother or coming from Mackenzie, where they get excited about like, it's on the news. And I'm just like, this is so weird to
You're not on the news for a good reason. And then she's like, I'm so embarrassed because people weren't taking her side. It's like she was, what did the news say? And then her mom's like, oh, let's not talk about it. And she's like, is it bad? And this, don't forget to put hashtag free Kenzie. And it's just, look, as a mother, I'm going out on a limb here. You don't want to think your kid would have done that intentionally. I don't want to say I don't fault her mom. I didn't in the beginning, but as this rolled along, there should have been a moment where you're like, wait, I remember very specifically the phone call where Dom recorded, where he's just trying to go out to dinner with his mom and his grandma. And she's like, oh, no, you're not, or I'm going to start breaking stuff. And it was just so unhinged. And it's like, you realize, to me, that was such a toxic relationship. And to see her just without any pause threaten to do this or do that. And, the stories you hear about how she treated him as a mom, even I would be like, wait, girl, I think you made a really bad decision at the last minute and you are where you are because of what you did. But I don't think that Natalie's at that point, and I don't think she ever will be, especially her dad. Both of them, to me, I think, and look, even Kenzie's sister at one point, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, went on TikTok and said she is the way she is because of my parents.
Yeah, I think I saw that too.
I mean, that, like, you don't need to hear it from anybody else. Like, that's not a question anymore. And it does seem like Kenzie was babied to, you can over baby your kids to where they never do anything wrong. That is the worst thing you can do. And then you end up with a Mackenzie Shirilla where everybody's against you and you did nothing wrong and everybody should feel sorry for her, when 99.9% of the country or the world don't feel bad for her. They feel bad for Dom and Davion, who their lives were just stopped in an instant, by a brick wall, and Mackenzie. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I mean,
I was literally the same page. It's like, looking at it, and, I don't have kids myself, I have dogs, but, totally different thing here. And so I look at the things that the mom's doing. I look at my own experience of being someone's son and the things that I did, because I was a hellion when I was growing up. And I look at some things to try and be like, okay, Paul. And I understand where a parent, it's like, that's your child. So you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, you don't want to think, even before we get to what happened on that night, just in general, because I feel like if we saw the evidence in the text messages of a balanced, healthy relationship between Mackenzie and Dom, and we saw normalcy there, and this did seem out of the blue of like what happened, everything was okay, her parents held her accountable throughout life and this and that, I think people would have more like, okay, well, maybe something is a little off here, how did we end up here? But you go back and it's like, she's never done anything wrong. Her parents are talking about going to school and just asking her face value, did you do this? Nope, that's good for me, okay, come on, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Never questioned anything. And like you said, I'm like, that's the worst thing you can do, because it creates a ticking time bomb. Your kid is going out into the world and hearing no for the first time. They don't know how to, like, they need to hear that at home first, and understand. Yeah, it's like, you're not the only person in the world. And I feel like she has that. It's almost like when you're watching it, it's almost like, number one, that her mom wants to be her, number one, her friend more than a mother. But there's almost this like vicariously living through her type thing, especially with the infamy. Mm-hmm. And it's really odd, and it feels just, it feels odd, but you see, like, to me, I'm like this, I'm like, Mackenzie's own worst enemy, first and foremost, is herself, and after that is her parents. She will never get out of prison as long as she is listening to her parents. I mean, regardless, right? She's already done so much stuff. She ain't getting out in 15 years at that first parole hearing.
No.
At all. And it's like, if her parents love her, they're going to teach her, what is it called? Not hard love. What's it called? Tough love. Tough love. Yeah. She needs tough love. The state's going to teach her. Whether she chooses to learn it or not is going to be up to her. So far, it doesn't look like it. It looks like she's in high school and she's living it up and having fun and making her little prison cupcakes and doing the things in her hair and all that. And it's going to be a rude awakening in 15 years when she goes before that board and they're like, yeah, that's a no-go. Go back. What do you do when you go there and you're just like, I don't remember what happened? And it's not going to be good.
And I think too, I think with her mom, one of the big things too, like you said, and it's something I never really kind of thought of that way, is it seemed like she was her friend. My youngest is 15. She's going into her sophomore year, but I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old who's about to be a dad. So for my 19 and 21-year-old, we are friends now. But when they were kids, I was their mom first. And, I was the cool mom. I had fun. Their friends liked coming over, but I also called them out when they were being little butts, because that's your responsibility. The world should not have to teach your kids responsibility. That comes at home. And when you don't, that's when you get a Mackenzie Shirilla who's in prison for life because she never suffered a consequence. I mean, if I knew my kid was smoking in high school, we would have some big issues. And I'm not against, at all, but if I found out my kid was doing it, we're going to have some talks. In fact, her dad got fired over his comments on that documentary. If you're going to do a drug, that's the one to do. I don't disagree, but like, you can't say that about your underage daughter who is facing murder charges. And also when you're a teacher at like a private, I think it was a religious school, yet you just signed your own exit contract. But even now, if her parents practiced tough love, it wouldn't work, because I think she would manipulate them emotionally to bring them right back to it. And you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. If you didn't raise your kid with limits and standards and morals, you're not going to teach them that as adults, and especially when they're in prison for 2 counts of murder.
Yeah. Oh, literally. Yeah. Yeah. And the way that it just keeps on going, the parents speaking out, almost going on a media blitz to try and correct, they do a media blitz. It lands poorly. They do another one. Now, they've been quiet since the crash, at least on a public level like that. Now
I think she talked to Cuomo, Chris Cuomo. She did an interview with him, but I didn't watch that yet.
Oh, you got to watch that. It's
bad. Dude, really?
It's bad.
Okay, now I'm going to watch when I lay around tonight.
He pushes back on a lot of stuff, right? Good. Especially there's 2 interviews. He does the one with the dad. You watch the one with the dad first, because I think it's almost worse, because like the dad's phone goes off. It's this weird ring. It's like one thing that I see present with all 3 of them is called time and place and take the temperature. And none, like Mackenzie and her parents don't have that barometer at all. And with this right here, where you're dealing with such a sensitive thing where lives are lost, lives are destroyed, and they are completely blind to that. And you're just, it's almost like, how are you this blind to this? Like, what do you think? Just like when the mom did the victim impact statement at the original trial, I was just like, what do you want her to go to prison for? She might be happy with Mackenzie in prison. She knows where she's at. She's out of their hair. She seems to have a better relationship now with her, because all this text messages between Dom and Mackenzie goes on about how much she hates being at home and how horrible it is, and she can't stand it. Well, you would listen to these phone calls and think that they're just best friends. And I'm sure that there's trauma bonding, and like this has brought them closer. And the mom might like that. It might not have been that way when she was out. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe mom's like, I'll send her some commissary money, but she ain't got to be in my house anymore, because that little brat, she's where she should be. Maybe. But they have totally recreated this whole other world where Dom and Davion are not victims, but Mackenzie is. And so when you have that, and that's how you treat your daughter, you're still placating her, even though she was found guilty. And, as much as that's come out, I remember one thing specifically that stood out to me in that documentary is when the detective was talking about being on the road right before the crash. It does curve a little bit. So if she's having a POTS syndrome moment and she's passed out, you're not going to make these curves. You're going to end up somewhere else really quick. And it doesn't explain, the controlled turn and then that acceleration. Now, was she maybe trying to scare them and it just got out of control? But you have that, you're responsible if that happens. I'm not saying that's what happened, but even if you're just trying to scare everybody in the car and you're going 100 miles an hour and you hit something and you kill them, guess what? You're responsible. So either way, it's just, she's where she needs to be. But you listen to those phone calls and it's like, I'm really glad she's where she is. And I hope more come out, because I want to hear what's going on now.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah.
If she still has her privileges, because she's been in some trouble too.
She can't stand the trouble.
Dude, between like no commissary and no tablet, that girl is just probably like, ugh.
The thing is, it's like she's doing hard time. Now granted, she apparently has like all the little luxuries you can get, but she makes her time hard because these issues that you hear present, like, in the text messages and before, they're still here. They've just translated to prison. You know what I mean? Like, she's just somebody who's never worked on themselves in any way. Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. And definitely as more comes out, we'll have to like reconvene and talk about more of the Mackenzie stuff. And then definitely let's get back together at some point in a couple of weeks once the defense.
Yeah, let's do. Oh, that might be a long episode, but I'm ready. I'm here for it. And, ultimately our opinions mean nothing. It's what that jury decides. That's how it's meant to be. That's how it should be. If I'm a juror right now, I have a lot of unanswered questions. And then you've got a defense attorney who is a bulldog, and I think is going to be very, very effective when his time comes. And I think tomorrow, I feel bad for Jennifer Tufts, honestly, because she's had all weekend to anticipate what's coming. And so, with her being the treating physician, the defense is going to put all this on her and question everything. So, but I'm interested for the defense case. I just think that, man, you put Patrick up there and he tells that jury, I forgive her. This was not my wife. She loved her babies. It could be hard. I don't know that it'll be a not guilty, Paul. I think we definitely could be getting a hung jury.
That's what I'm thinking.
I don't think it's going to be a not guilty by reason. I mean, look, I've been surprised before. Casey Anthony, case in point. But I kind of predict a hung jury. And then the state has to realize, do they want to do this again? I mean, just send her to for me, if it's a hung jury, I just say, look, send her away. The thing that people have a problem with is like Andrea Yates, you do come up to a point where you can get out. But Andrea Yates said, I am not well. I'm not leaving, which, kudos to her for recognizing she's not mentally stable and shouldn't be out in society. But we got a lot to talk about coming up, man. So let's make some plans to reconvene once the defense case starts and go over that. But yeah, I'm interested to see how the state ends their case. And I'm just every day looking at this like a juror. So everything I've said today is if I'm on that jury, because I have no legal training or experience and I don't claim to, I just look at things like a juror would. And if I'm on that jury, that's how I'm seeing all of this. So,
yeah.
Yep.
I like that. I like your perspective on things because that's how I come at it too. I like to look at all the angles and just take it in. And I appreciate it about you and your channel and how you run it.
Same to you, man. I think we were meant to be twins.
I know, right?
But something happened along the way, like your dad and my mom didn't meet or something. But we can claim to
do
be
some
twins.
genealogy of like, wait a minute.
I found out at CrimeCon that I'm like by marriage cousins with Cece Suarez.
Oh my God, really?
Her husband is cousins with my cousins. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Our booths were right across, and she was fun. I like.
I like her.
I love everybody. I just love seeing everybody at CrimeCon.
Yeah, it is nice. It's very nice.
It is fun. It's kind of like this messed up little true crime family reunion,
I know, right? Well, look, everybody, make sure I put all GiGi's stuff down in the description box below. So if you're not already subscribed and following her, to go do it now. And again, thanks, GiGi, for taking time out of your schedule to come here. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Dude, anytime, Paul. It's like talking to a friend. Like we were just sitting on the porch, sipping some sweet tea and talking about what we think. So anytime, man.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you on the next go round.
Thanks, Paul.